Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Masters of the Universe, the Shard of Darkness. After a not-so-long journey with a gem corrupting his mind, He-Man was led to enemy territory, trusting Wizardess Evil-Lyn just long enough to be betrayed. With a complete gem within her grasp to enhance her powers, Evil-Lyn's plans were upended when Skeletor shows up. Man, the office Christmas party at Snake Mountain is going to be extra awkward this year.
Issue 4's cover takes on a very different art style, as some of our heroes are surrounded by villains, and He-Man is just kind of standing there, looking like he's belting out opera. Come on, man, even Orko is heading towards the fight. Priorities! And by the looks of the credits page, it looks like he's doing an 80s power ballad, which, okay, feels appropriate. We open to a splash page devoted entirely to Evil-Lyn being blasted from off-panel. Trapjaw is horrified, and Tri-Klops, he's cool with it, because he obviously ratted them out. After Lyn is blasted again, Trapsy falls to his knees begging for forgiveness and insisting he was tricked. Skeletor really isn't feeling that generous, so wants Klopsy to take both traitors away for later punishment, but that's when their scanners pick up a fleet closing in on them very quickly.
It's the Girl Scouts, sir. They haven't forgotten you still owe them $75 for all those Thin Mints, and they're loaded for bear!
Figuring it's the Masters on their way to help their unconscious champion, Skeletor adds the Shard of Darkness to the Shakaran crystal, restoring it, changing its color, and prepared to use it against his encroaching enemies. Speaking of, Man-at-Arms is leading the fleet on a hunch that He-Man is under the influence of evil magic, and may not return if they don't find him. He must also be following the tracker he mentioned last issue, because that's the only reason they should be heading towards Snake Mountain. Unfortunately, this being a quick get-out mission, like getting snacks from the 7-Eleven, are dashed when they see enemy planes headed for them. And a remark is made that the supposed long-range stealth shielding on the Battlehawks didn't prove very helpful.
It seems like having those legs extended that way creates a whole lot of drag. Maybe their stealth capabilities failed because too much power went into each hawk, having two huge chunks of machinery killing their aerodynamics. Once again, I thought Man-at-Arms was the smart one.
Manny orders his forces to spread the enemies out, which they do on a 2-page spread. And it looks like Skeletor's mechanics had similar designs and design flaws in their own attack vehicles. They essentially look like repaints of one another.
It means an object or device featured in a cartoon that could easily become a mass-produced toy.
Anyway, Manny hopes to break through and find He-Man, who, meanwhile, is suspended by chains and blasted awake by his nemesis, taking delight in how, for all his might and moral superiority, he managed to be corrupted by the Shard. Skeletor even taunts the idea of setting him loose on his friends, seeing if he'll go so far as to turn on them, if only because it'd be fun. But for now, he'll harness the crystal's combined power to make them suffer as he conquers the planet. But just as he makes the attempt, Johnny Loincloth starts flexing something fierce, breaking his chains and challenging Skelly. Though we see him break one of his arm chains, fall to the ground, leap from a blast, then a panel where his other arm is freed, so already the continuity is goofy. Yet they didn't bother to show how he freed his legs. Weird. He takes the ram's staff, and since Skullface has the Sword of Power, each one charges with the other's weapon.
And lo, many a toy collector simultaneously squeed at seeing the scenario they made up as kids, or as adults on their bookcases, played out on the page.
They clash a little, and I mean a little, before Skeletor just throws the sword at him, which I would normally call stupid, but even though its owner dodges and catches it, the villain uses it as a distraction to grab his staff and hit him right in the breadbasket, which is actually pretty clever. But they go back to fighting over the evil nightlight. "The crystal belongs to me!"
Fool! You don't even know why you want the crystal. I majored in child psychology. I know mimetic desire when I see it.
The gem seems to call out to He-Man as the two run toward it, put their hands on it at the same time, and Skeletor is zapped back. I guess because muscles touched it a microsecond sooner? Upon contact, there is an explosion, and Prince Adam stands before a roided-out and sinister-looking version of He-Man.
Oh, jeez, this is just like that recurring dream I have every week. Except there's no flying pudding walrus, I have my pants on, and Tila isn't laughing at me.
It's not exactly made clear where they are right now, but my best guess would be Adam's mind. Some entity has taken the body of He-Man for its own vessel, intent on a mass extinction of the planet to make way for the rightful rulers of the universe. Adam, who can barely lift the power sword, tries fighting back, so the being decides, okay, I'll just straight up kill you before busting out. Its appearance becomes much more demonic, overflowing with energy, and it gets one attack in before the prince chops off its arms, then runs it through with the sword. Guess that trouble he was having just went away. It's reduced to a talking skull that won't admit defeat before a flash of light returns us to muscles in the caverns. Now a cloaked spectral figure, it claims it can't be destroyed, as the power sword shatters the Shakaran crystal into, well, a lot more than 2 pieces. And the instance of He-Man Smash causes a rather large explosion inside the maw of the Snake Mountain, snake.
Skeletor would later get a call from his neighbor Phil to keep the noise down over there, and at the very least, the snake should say, "Excuse me."
With nary a scratch on him, He-Man falls from the mouth alongside the lava fall, just in time for Man-at-Arms' flyby rescue, then immediately restraining him and injecting him with a sedative as a precaution, and tells the other masters to fall back and return to base. Later, at Castle Grayskull, Manny has a bit of a beef with the sorceress, who's busying herself with some floating orbs. Apparently there were some losses for the Masters. Not that we saw any and therefore can't get invested, though they probably were no-names, and the scientist also questions sending He-Man unaccompanied with an artifact that was corrupting him. She insists there wouldn't have been any casualties had he heeded her earlier request, as it was foretold that Blondie would have been fine, even with that fall of several hundred feet at the end there. You know, right into lava. It was no accident that He-Man was sent to handle that mission alone.
Of course it wasn't. You told him to go alone, and they trusted you. Kind of their whole argument, lady.
Evidently, there is a prophecy about a test of strength, challenging not only He-Man, but the one chosen to wield his power. She knew what the crystal could do, but didn't think Man-at-Arms, protected by his armor, would have figured it out.
I don't have the Team 4-star video clip for this, so, he's gonna need a senzu for that one.
Also, there's something funky about Sorceress's pose here. She's turned her head from them, but her expression is that of mild, possibly feigned distress, like she's being coy or something. Whatever. Adam asks if the crystal and the nougat of evil inside are gone for good, and the response is a very roundabout, "I don't know, we'll have to wait and see." And the comic ends on Snake Mountain, as we see a fragment among the lava flow that disappears in between panels. Or maybe the battery ran out.
That was Masters of the Universe, Shard of Darkness. And honestly, I kind of feel middle of the road about it. I can't say I loved it, but it wasn't really that bad either.
It very much feels like a mini-series designed to test the waters for an ongoing, and has a good enough concept, but I don't think they really went anywhere with it. It's mentioned briefly how this new responsibility kind of weighs on Prince Adam, but he spends most of his time as He-Man, doing his He-Man thing. And when he ponders having the power to stop Skeletor for good with the wisdom of the ancients, they never truly revisit that. Adam versus evil He-Hulk could use more clarification in terms of what plane of existence they're in, and how the prince overcame him when initially he had trouble with the sword.
There was a chance here to play up the duality at work. Both He-Man and his younger alter ego possess memories of each other's actions, but whereas Adam can be headstrong, naive, or clueless, his transformed state is more wise, cunning, clever, and resourceful. When you think about it, if He-Man doesn't magically gain wisdom somehow, where does it all come from?
One way I think some of this could have been improved is if they had established that perhaps the two halves talked to each other at times in what I'm guessing was a kind of mindscape. Or maybe one is dormant until this crystal started whispering in He-Man's ear, leading Adam's consciousness to become more aware, seeing what was going on as the evil entity began favoring the one with more raw power. Then that stuff Man-at-Arms said in the first issue about how some would abuse his power would actually play into the overall narrative. Meet that comfortable middle ground between some fun, mindless magic action and relaying a meaningful message for the audience.
Heck, you could have had Adam contemplate what this creature would do to his friends and loved ones, giving him that classic righteous rage boost to swing the sword of power like it was made of wicker, and denying the enhancements the crystal offered. But that would risk showing us more of his supporting cast, which they somehow couldn't fit in here.
I get that he's the main character, the big draw, and not everyone is going to get the spotlight in 4 issues, but it's weird that the book is called Masters of the Universe when we barely see any of them besides Man-at-Arms, and it's mostly at the end. Feels like it would have made more sense to either add He-Man's name to the title overall, which has been done before, or just go whole hog and replace it with He-Man entirely. As it happens, we seem to get more on the villains than we do the heroes, which, while not too in-depth, is fairly well done. Evil-Lyn is cunning and ambitious, Trapjaw just seems to go where he feels will benefit himself, but only if he thinks he'll get away with it, and Tri-Klops comes off as loyal, pragmatic, practical, and accepting of things as they come with his belief in fate. Though he didn't feature all that much, and we didn't see how he punished the treacherous goons under his control, Skeletor did seem a lot more capable than even his rebooted counterpart. But maybe it only seems that way because he didn't do much. Much like the cartoon, his cruelty is left mostly ambiguous, and he could get overconfident, but here he didn't feel too foolish or watered down. Though maybe part of that is the art style.
Again, deviates so much from the cartoon of the time, it feels almost like a completely different product. Certainly a departure compared to other show-based comics that can either be canonical with the TV series, or more take it or leave it.
When it comes to dialogue, action, and the story, this would have fit pretty comfortably in the first season of the 2002 He-Man series. Except for He-Man getting stabbed and bleeding, there's nothing overly graphic, though there isn't as much cheese in here that sometimes came up in the show. Though I think perhaps the cartoon would have been clearer about the message of abuse of power, and I don't think Evil-Lyn would have been as seductive as she was. I'm kinda mixed on the sorceress's actions, though. I can accept that the supposed losses of Man-at-Arms' troops are kind of on him for not trusting her judgment, since He-Man did overcome his trials without his help. I can even go with the idea that she didn't mention the corrupting nature of the crystal because that was part of the test. But how no one guessed the shard was affecting their minds until issue 3, when all the signs were there in plain sight, was just silly. Though it opens up a question I don't think the creators on the book intended. Did the sorceress lie about the crystal when she said most of it was in another dimension, or was she just wrong? If it's the latter, then it actually helps Manny's decision to take a squad to help He-Man, since it shows her fallibility. But if she fudged her history lesson on purpose, the only reason I could think of is that it forces He-Man to think on his feet to choose whether to succumb to the evil or destroy its vessel. Which is, of course, just my theory. When writers make too much about their story vague, it raises the question if they're leaving clues for the readers to find, or did they leave stuff out because of time constraints, editorial mistakes, or sloppiness.
Overall, this story had really good art, decent pacing, but it could have used a bit more work on what He-Man and or Adam were supposed to learn, and how they got there other than being the main character. It won't change the world, but if you like the franchise, you may enjoy it. And for you fans of nostalgia, it's based on a cartoon from the early 2000s that was based on an older cartoon from the 1980s. That's like nostalgia cubed. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.